For generations, Americans believed the West was endless. It was a place where land stretched beyond the horizon, where failure could be escaped, and where opportunity waited just one wagon ride away. The idea of the West shaped the nation's soul: freedom, risk, and reinvention. But one day, quietly and without ceremony, that dream ended. The West was declared closed. The story begins long before the announcement. Throughout the 1800s, settlers pushed westward under the promise of cheap land and a better life. Wagon trains crossed dangerous trails. Gold seekers flooded California. Farmers broke prairie soil, and cowboys drove cattle across open ranges. The West was not lawless chaos, as legends later claimed, but a fragile balance of survival, hope, and violence. Yet every mile gained came at a cost. Native American nations were forced from their ancestral lands through broken treaties, military campaigns, and massacres. Reservations replaced homelands, railroads carved through hunting grounds. What Americans called settlement, indigenous peoples experienced as invasion. Each conquest narrowed the frontier. Technology accelerated the process. Railroads connected distant territories to eastern cities, bringing soldiers, settlers, and supplies. Telegraph lines erased isolation. Barbed wire fenced the open plains, ending the era of free movement for both cattle and people. The West was no longer wild; it was organized, owned, and controlled. By the late 1880s, there was little land left that the federal government considered unsettled. Towns stood where wilderness once dominated. Sheriffs, courts, and tax collectors replaced frontier justice. The independent settler found himself competing not with nature, but with banks, rail companies, and corporations. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1890, the United States Census Bureau released a report stating that there was no longer a clear frontier line. Settlement had spread so widely that the boundary between civilization and wilderness no longer existed. With a single bureaucratic declaration, the West was officially closed. There were no celebrations, no mourning, just ink on paper. To many Americans, the announcement felt unsettling. Historian Frederick Jackson Turner soon argued that the frontier had shaped the nation's character: its democracy, individualism, and optimism. If the frontier was gone, what would define America next? The closure of the West marked a profound shift. For decades, Americans had believed that anyone could start over by moving farther west. Failure was temporary. Land meant freedom. Now, that escape vanished. Economic pressures intensified. Cities grew crowded. Industrial labor replaced frontier independence. The promise of limitless opportunity faded. The government and corporations quickly filled the vacuum. Railroads monopolized transportation. Mining companies controlled resources. Farmers fell into debt. The rugged individual was no longer the engine of progress capital was. The West had been tamed not by bravery, but by paperwork, law, and profit. Culturally, the West did not disappear; it transformed into myth. Buffalo Bill's Wild West shows toured the world, celebrating a frontier that no longer existed. Dime novels exaggerated gunfights and outlaws. Later, Hollywood films turned the closing of the West into heroic legend, ignoring the displacement, suffering, and environmental destruction that made it possible. For Native Americans, the closure was not symbolic. It was final. Their resistance was crushed. Their movement restricted. Their cultures suppressed through forced assimilation. While the nation spoke of progress, entire ways of life were pushed to the edge of survival. The land itself bore the scars. Forests were cut, rivers diverted, buffalo nearly vanished. The West that once promised harmony with nature became a landscape reshaped for industry and ownership. The day the West was closed did not end adventure; it redirected it. With no land left to claim, America looked outward. Overseas expansion, global trade, and foreign wars became the new frontier. The nation carried the frontier mindset with it, even when the frontier itself was gone. In the end, the West was not closed by a wall or a battle. It was closed by success, by growth, by the very forces that once drove people westward. What died that day was not a place, but an idea, the belief that there would always be somewhere else to go. And when the West was finally closed, America was forced to confront a new question. How do you define freedom when the frontier no longer exists?